My name is Michael, and I'll be talking about the data-driven decision-making in free-to-play games. So basically, how we do games in our company and how we perform the decisions, what data are we collecting, kinda like a shortcut, like a small piece of what our work looks like. And also some path that I've gone through from doing free-to-play games an incorrect way, through making it better up to making it even better by learning from the mistakes. And I'll try to show you what those kinds of small mistakes can be still have a big impact on the final result. So yeah, it will be mostly based on experience collected from the chess and checkers games company, The Last Qubits, which is my own, and also one in undisclosed, because I can't disclose it. But it's the third company is mostly focused on making merge games like Merge Dragons, Merge Magic, and so on. This was a project that I was working on as well before, and it will be a comparison of the design methods starting from that first company up to now, and hopefully forward, like summing up the conclusions that we've come to from what we've done so far. And this will be the main projects: the undisclosed merge game, the chess Clash of Kings, so the one that we are developing in chess and checkers, and also Alchemy Pipes, which is our own game that we are also developing with the help of chess and checkers. So we are getting some of the knowledge and trying to use it to improve and iterate the game faster. So yeah, the first company, the one that we were creating the merge game, it was a premium company, a company that was making only mostly premium games, which meant that when we've arrived at the moment that we've needed to decide whether we want to make a free-to-play game and whether we can handle actually making it, we mostly came to it and designed everything and planned everything, focused on how we've developed and created the games before. So having many years of premium games development means that you are doing it probably wrong, because you're mostly doing it the standard way. You need to decide on the game. We are doing the analysis. We are collecting the data on what kinds of free-to-play games would fit what we want to achieve and the directions that we want to develop into. We've collected the scope, the necessary mechanics, planned how much work would all those mechanics need, what is necessary, what's most important to create such a big project. It was a merge game, which means the competition is quite high, so we've needed to get to some particular spot to even release it, or we thought so. So it's not a shame, so we'll get actual data from the players so that no one will hate the game at the start, and so on and so on. And also, yeah, we've developed the game for quite, probably 1 year of time or something. Also, there was a testing stage and so on and so on. So after the final results were corrected, this was the first time that we've actually came to the moment where we could check whether it's a profitable project, whether the mechanics that we've developed are actually good, whether players like that. It was a lot of work put blindly into the final project. So it was a blind game of luck, quite a risky approach. The validation of the project was quite late. It was, we've prepared it the standard premium way. So it means that we were adapting some mechanics, adding some our own mechanics, getting the designers, of course, the good ones. And then we've needed to collect those ideas and then decide on what mechanics would fit our game. But we didn't have any feedback, because it was mostly create the game. It is good because other games have all those mechanics. So let's try doing this, copying this, improving on that, expanding, and then testing. Designers can be really wrong. If you have a good designer with experience in free-to-play games, they are quite often expensive for a premium creating games company. So we didn't have the courage to go full into that. We've collected all the designers that we could afford, which created the quite great projects before for the premium games, so they were mostly like the Hoba games and so on. So they were good, but not exactly for the project. And it meant that they've learned with us, and it was a risky move. The game was fortunately quite successful, so it's not like something that failed, but it was of high risk. If it failed, we would know that only after that 12 months release. And when creating the free-to-play game, there is a lot that's happening on the mobile market, so the trends are getting different. New mechanics are being born. There is a lot of impact on that first-time user experience. You are paying for every single install, and you need to get those money back, or to be able to verify at which point you should get those money back for the project to continue. Iterating was also made difficult because before the release we didn't know actually anything. The testing was focused on small testing groups. We were like providing the builds for the players that were eager to play, that we knew that they are playing those kinds of games. So that feedback was more valuable for us because they knew those games and they were able to like feedback comparing to those other projects how we are performing. Then it was slowly scaling up, but it was nothing like just releasing the game early, then buying a lot of players and having hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of impressions. If the project failed after those 12 months, it would be a disaster. We wouldn't know anything, like should we remove some of the mechanics, where's the problem in the game, whether it's gameplay, whether it's the random graphic choice that we've performed. So we've just thought that, okay, those other games look like something, so we should hire the graphic artist that can develop that particular graphic style, and then let's see if people like it. After 12 months of work of 10 or 15 graphic artists, we still didn't perform any tests for example, fake videos or fake graphics or anything like getting wish lists or anything. We didn't have anything. We just hoped that, okay, this will be something that the players will love because we love that, and who can blame us? Because we've had the previous experiences with different kinds of games told us that we know what we are doing. Yeah. And that was in the end. The project was fortunately successful, but it was quite risky. Then I moved to the chess and checker games. One moment, okay. I can speak slower. So I moved to chess and checker games, which is, we are the company mostly focused on developing our board games, so not surprisingly chess and checkers games, but also some side projects and ports, and we are slowly developing, but this is the main focus and our biggest, most earning project. And also that chess and checkers apps are really big in scale. So we have a lot of daily active users, and that's important, that any big failure, any big change or like huge disaster that will happen can cost us a lot. So we need to iterate slowly, make an evolution instead of the revolution inside of the app. And after not a long time, a first big challenger appeared for us, which was expanding the application from offline-only game into then an actual free-to-play big game that has multiplayer. People can match with each other and play with each other, and it's fun and so on. You can earn money because, you know, when you invest way more of your attention because it's multiplayer and there are actual players on the other side, that's way more immersive than just giving you an option to play offline and then play anywhere at any time you want, get back to the game at any point you want. So our main goal was to add multiplayer, but without cannibalizing existing offline gameplay, because we've had a lot of active users. The application was present on the market for quite a long time. So losing those players could be like mean anything. Maybe we could just close the company at that point. Probably not, but it's never good to kill an already successful project. So we've needed to plan for it. How to develop the new features, how to check whether those features are actually interesting for the players, because we thought then, based on the market research, that multiplayer is something our application will benefit from. But how do we know? We have a lot of players that are accustomed to that offline mode, a lot of mechanics focused on monetizing that. It wasn't exactly the same with what we wanted to opt for when it comes to monetizing those online players. It was quite a different environment. For those players that would convert to that part, we wanted to focus more on the in-app part of the application and spending actual money instead of just having fun, adding more advertisements and things like that. The project had a big population of active players, and some of those players played for quite a long time, like a couple of years. So having players that didn't update the game for a couple of years means that part of them probably can update for some time. There are some players that could update after 1 month of being inactive or 6 months. So we need to prepare for them and also to plan for those new players. How will you encourage the new players that don't know your app on using some particular features? Before that, we've had only the offline-only gameplay, and we knew how to monetize that, the offline mode only. So it meant that not only did we need to learn the new monetization techniques, we've needed to add some, for example, special currencies that would be useful for those new, more premium options. So a big change for all the players that were accustomed that they can just get into the application, start playing, it's free, everything is free, just with some advertisements. Now, the plan was that they will need to pay something, invest something into the match and get out, and this is a whole different thing for those players, especially for the players that played for quite a long time and then updated and they came into the application, wow, there is a new mode, but I've also lost of some things because now they are not free, that was always free. So we thought that, okay, development can be split, of course, in 2 parts. So there is a simple part. We can make the first step adding some invite-only mode. Invite-only mode is extra for us because it's something easy to add, easier because you don't need that population for the players to play. You can invite your friend, then you can send him a message or her a message when they stop playing, for example. When they try to do something stupid, you can just get to their home and punch them in their face, so it's easier. Giving the people the opportunity to match with any player around the world is more difficult. You need the player base big enough for the players to actually be able to find the player in short enough time, or for example, to match those players with an equal competitor. A lot of additional complex things. On the other hand, creating that invite-only mode also is a big part, a big amount of work that we would need to put into that. So it was quite a hard decision, whether we want to do those parts one after another, learn from the first stage and so on, or we could, for example, go all in and then create the quick match mode with automatic players getting together to play first. Yeah, but the most important question was whether we should actually do it. So we think that multiplayer is something that players want, but how to test that? We have a big population of players, so maybe we could ask them, but asking players is not that easy. We wanted to check whether the player, someone that not only is already playing our application for some time, but also is a new player that we've just bought using the user acquisition, whether those players would want to play that online mode, that new big feature that would be a great investment for us, potentially new monetization opportunities, but also a big cost because you need those players, you need to support those players for some time, you need to make the machine run first and then collect the money from the players. Without that big community, it's difficult to start with with real multiplayer gameplay. We've performed some first analysis, which is just launching other board games similar to ours, the successful ones. And we've noticed that, okay, all those applications do have the multiplayer, which means that probably there is some interest. But on the other hand, there is a risk that okay, those players that want to play the multiplayer game, when they for example, look in Google for a multiplayer app of chess, it means that they will already find those applications. So it may mean that the offline players are getting to us because it's easier, our application is easier to use, and those hardcore gamers are getting there and spending their time there. Already converted and invested player in their apps probably would not exactly come back to us for a small price. The other thing was that we wanted to have multiplayer, so it was an important thing here. We knew that in future projects we would probably need that feature, so we've decided, okay, maybe it's the time we should start and test that and check if our players are ready for it. And if successful, it would open new monetization opportunities because we could distribute more energy into improving our in-app purchases instead of mostly relying on displaying ads. So yeah, that was the time that when we've decided, okay, let's start it. Let's add this great online game button and go into creating first iterations. What we can get to, what we can do to start getting some data and deciding whether those players want to play our multiplayer mode. So we can create some proof of concept, something small, matching first players, checking whether they want to play, and then collecting the data, deciding that if that percentage of players that played the first game or finished the first game were actually satisfying enough. But of course, we can do something even smaller. We can just add an online game button in the menu and then display them some panel information that, okay, you were interested in playing online mode and collect that data, and then display them the information that, okay, the online mode is still in development, it will be available soon, and so on and so on. Having a big number of players means that you have a lot of those data points where you can gather, show them that that option, get into check whether the players are actually going into that online mode without any actual gameplay available. Because it doesn't matter how well the multiplayer mode would be developed, how much work we would put into that, and how many features we would develop, because if people wouldn't be interested into clicking that button, into getting into that mode and actually looking, searching for those options of playing with other players, if it would be like 1% of those community getting into that mode, maybe it wouldn't be something interesting for us, especially that adding the multiplayer mode means you need to have those players, you need to have the technology, you need to pay for the servers, and so on and so on. You have constant costs, and you need to be sure that it's something that you want to develop into. So we've collected the data about the interest in the online mode for our game. There was two main information that were important for us at that point. What percentage of active long-term players are interested into getting into online mode? So you have that big number of players playing in offline. Do they really want to convert into online players, or are they so stuck into this offline mode, playing with computer, doing the challenge mode, that they just don't care? And the second thing, what percentage of first-time players that we are buying, because we have a lot of user acquisition campaigns, would actually convert? Because before that, we were mostly focused on getting the offline players, and all the campaigns were adjusted to getting those ones. It's not exactly the same as getting the hardcore player that wants to meet with others and actually get some social experience from the game. So we've performed the tests, we got the results. The tests were performed in small scale when it comes to percentage. So we've just released that option, slowly expanded the number of players that updated to that new version, checking whether it's not a huge disaster, like when people are getting into online mode and seeing this panel, they rage quit and then stop playing, because we didn't want that, especially for that player base. And still a small percentage, but from a big player base means a lot of data that we can decide based on. It seemed that around 30% of new and updating players were interested in playing online mode. So there was interest. It wasn't like 90% of active players, so it was something we should look at, whether we can improve that, whether it's something like dangerous for that big decision. And yeah, high percentage of those new players also were getting directly into the online mode. So even for those players that were bought using the campaigns not aimed at directly getting that hardcore player, some of them were getting directly into that multiplayer that were interesting for their first experience to be playing with some other player that was available somewhere online. So yeah, let's do it. That was the decision at that point. We need to add multiplayer because it seems that everything is favorable for us. People want to play the multiplayer mode. We need to get back to the drawing board. We need to design those first iterations. We knew that people in general, when they play board games, they meet with someone. They probably have some friends they play those board games with. So why not start with something small, that invite-only mode? People will get into that, it will invite new players, and it will be just fun. It will be something safe, some safe place for them to play with something they know, instead of getting directly into auto-matching and all the LOs and leveling and everything. It's simple. You invite friends, you send them an SMS message or an email, and they can join you in the game. So yeah, we've developed the invite-only mode, collected all the tech, prepared all the solutions, also implemented the new currency for that mode. The currency went global for all the features, so we needed to adjust the players to something new that will arrive in our application. And the release was successful, so a lot of data collecting, a lot of work put into that meant it was really successful. It rolled out to the players. We've had a lot of players, so if something failed, it would fail hard, but we also were testing it slowly, enabling next players to be able to play that mode. It worked almost perfectly. Of course, there were some issues, small issues, but with a couple of patches and iterations, it started to work with no bigger gameplay problems. People were matching, people were playing their games, and it was a success. It was a turn-based gameplay because it was chess, so it was, of course, a lot easier than making something real-time. Playing with friends meant that you can call your friend whenever they are slacking. They are leaving they were able to leave the game, so you can just call them or SMS them. We've noticed a lot of movement like that with our friends, that whenever you are playing with your friend, they were directly messaging you. It seemed that it's growing up, the community is growing up, and people are really having fun from that. But the interest was underwhelming. So it was a great technical success and it worked, but the interest was nothing compared to the data that we've collected before. There was a big interest in players converting, so something was not exactly right at this moment. The mode was perfectly designed, but because of some issues, and we needed to detect them, something was not exactly perfect for the play. So, of course, after some testing, we've noticed that inviting other players is quite difficult. You need to get into some new screen, and then you press invite, and you need to send email, get out of the application, send the link, hope that the other player will know how to open that, how to join the game. Some probably consent will terrorize them at the start, and so on and so on. So it's not that easy. It seems easy when you're already playing the game and you're not some new player that was invited by your friend. But whenever you're launching a new app and getting the direct invitation and so on, it's often that you are not invested, and that person is inviting another player because they want to play with someone, but no one is accepting. And after some time, it seemed that it's slowly dying out. There were some players, and quite a couple % of players that were playing, but it was nothing like similar to the percentage that we've aimed for. And it was a turn game, and we've prepared it so well that you could just leave the game and then come into the game, and nothing could break, and you could just leave, and then someone would call you, or you were reminded by the notification that, okay, you need to perform your move because your opponent performed a move. But it also means that if you don't invest a lot, you're not actively participating in this match, and you are just leaving, going to do your chores or going to work, you can easily forget that you were playing something. And okay, someone can remind you first time, second time, and so on. But after a couple of times, when that's in like offline, online mode, it means that people are losing interest. And there were not that many matches that were actually finished. So people were like burning out slowly after the first invite and a couple of moves. It was dying out. It's not a fun experience when you're playing and as you're getting closer and closer to ending that match, you are just losing the other player and nothing happens because you don't have any rewards from that, because we didn't have at that point any rewarding system like earning gold for winning that match. And no investment was also an issue. You could easily get into that invite mode, create a match, invite players. It wouldn't cost you anything, so you didn't put any gold on that or any ticket or anything on that match. You didn't bet anything, so why would you care about finishing that game? If you just leave it, uninstall the game, it doesn't matter. Uninstalling probably, it wouldn't save you from uninstalling, but you could easily create another match and another match, even with the same player, and then terrorize them with a long list of games opened and like playing in parallel. So yeah, there were some issues. We were really good at developing that mode, but some mistakes have been made, and we've needed to improve and get some data, get some knowledge, and improve on how we test. So we've tested whether the multiplayer was required, and the data seemed that there's a high percentage of the players that would want that multiplayer mode, but overestimated the necessity for that invite-only mode. It's not that it's something bad, because there's some percentage of players that are using it, but on the other hand, it's something you still need to develop, or for example, make sure that it's still working. You still need some support on the backend side. Some more data points would help us decide whether it should be the all-in approach with the automatically finding players, or the invite-only mode, whether we should care. Maybe we could add some additional button inside of that section. Instead of displaying the panel telling that it's not ready yet, then let players decide and check which would be of greater interest, whether they would go directly into quick match game or invite only, play with friends, and so on. But on the other hand, too many decisions here, especially that they aren't getting any reward for that because they are not getting that actual multiplayer, would mean that probably that retention would get worse. So not a perfect solution. We didn't go for that option, but we've tested that in previous company, in previous project. Making service with rewards would be something probably beneficial. In the previous project, for all those players that were invested at some point during the gameplay, when we were deciding that, okay, this is the player that converted and we care about them, that was the moment to display them an optional survey, and they had like option, okay, so what's the next big thing that you would want implemented in that game? Whether it's the play with your friend, or automatically find other players, or maybe something totally different. 3 or 4 options with reward for completing that, and we've gained a lot of data from that. Players that are invested and are actually using the application, telling us what's the new thing that we could earn from giving them that option, because they were already monetizing. These were those core players that we were really interested about keeping and monetizing even better. And of course, we could do even more market analysis, so check what's the exact thing that other companies are doing, whether if we'll go deeper into those other companies, it's like most of them display this huge quick match, automatically matching and so on in the front, and then there's somewhere small option. Okay, if you really, really want to play with a friend, there is that last option, but we don't care if it's well displayed and easy to use and so on, because it's not the main goal, the main monetization option. So yeah, we've decided that, okay, we will try with the quick match, couple of sprints, automated matching, allo matching, and so on. You can play with people around the globe at your level and have fun, and there is the currency for that, and there is the option of getting into better rooms and so on, all the standard stuff. The difficulty spike at this point was removed. Even the new players that freshly got into the application, they went into the matching room and they were able to just start playing, and it seemed that the conversion of the players that are getting for the first time into the application, or the percentage of players that are getting into that online mode and then starting the first game, was really great, and also a lot of them finished that first game, which was way better compared to that invite-only mode, because then the percentage of players that got into the invite-only mode and then started playing and then finished any game, that was not so satisfying at this point. For quick match, it was really a success. This time it was a success not only when it comes to the development, but when it comes to actual performance. And also the retention for those players that were invested into playing with others was better, so overall retention also increased a little. So yeah, it was an important moment. Now we know that we have that online mode, invite only, and also quick match. We have way better application, more modes. What we should do next? So yeah, it seemed that around 40% of players updating and new were getting into the online mode without any additional support, so no tutorials, no anything. We've had a lot of old players that were playing, which meant that there is quite a big percentage of players, quite a big number of players that are playing. On the other hand, around 85% of players were actively using the offline mode. So it meant that the player base that we can monetize there or give them more opportunities to do something in the application would be better. Before the multiplayer, most of the players were playing offline. On the other hand, the quick match players were better when it comes to the revenue and retention. So those players that were really invested in playing online were better players for us, but it was smaller percentage than overall users. So we could add more offline functionalities because we have a big loyal number of players there, give them some more stuff to do, stuff to monetize with. We could also, if those quick match users perform better, maybe we should put more pressure on those players, like adding a tutorial. Check here, there's a new option, get here, start the new game, you can match up with other players around the world, it's fun, rewards, money and everything, yeah? You can just like guide those players to try this. And also you can just add some new quick match mechanics, so improve the monetization of those players, add more stuff to do in that quick match mode. So we've tested the first hypothesis, so let's try increasing the quick match conversion. So if more players, we have a lot of players, but not a big percentage of them are still using, there's a big percentage that is not using the online mode, maybe you can just point them to that mode. Come here, play this, first game, it's fun. New tutorials added. So first thing, we need to convert old updating players. So we can't convert the players that are not coming but that stop playing, but those that are updating are still active in the application. You can try converting them. Converted players seems to be generating more revenue, generating better retention percentage. You can put new players directly into multiplayer mode. So whenever you buy the player, the first experience the player gets inside of the application is press here. It's the cool feature, the multiplayer mode. You can try it. It's great. So we've tested that on small player base. What will happen if we will try to force players into playing quick match? Maybe they will be more invested because it's fun. We like that mode. But overall results were worse. not all the old-time players wanted to convert. So some of the players that were forced were rage quitting or just didn't care. They didn't play the next games. They still got back to just playing the old way, the safe way. It's something they knew. If the campaigns that we were having were buying the players, they were not focused on getting those players. So trying to buy players that are aimed at playing offline and then trying to force them into online mode is quite risky. Maybe it would be successful, maybe not. It would be a great risk, so maybe not. Maybe start smaller. Maybe start with a more safe approach first. So a different approach. If that 30% of players converted without any help and they were getting better results from that, so there is a small but not such a small when it comes to the numbers, like mass of players playing, we can just focus on improving their experience. So not forcing more players to play, but getting that small portion and get more revenue and better results from them. Let them have more fun and let them connect that with spending more money. So we've decided that, okay, this is the group that we want to focus on. We want to focus on improving the in-app purchases as well to distribute the risk between the ads and the in-app purchase monetization. So yeah, we can add more rooms or different time limits so player can have different experience when they improve progress, get better level in the game. We've added some taxing to the game so people need to get the money somehow to play the game and to be able to play next matches. If they are good, they will just collect the money by winning, but if they are failing hard, they need to get those money somehow. There are a lot of options to get that, not only getting your wallet. We've added simple chat, the allow automatic matching with similar players, and improving the shop and application navigation. So there were more points from where you could get to shop and buy something and then get back into game without any complex going through the application and looking for that mode where I and what I was doing. And also limiting the free play tickets. So if you've invested into playing, you've needed to either collect those tickets or decide which is the most important room for you, of biggest reward, of lowest risk, or of greatest benefit. So we've done that. We've expanded the quick match mode. There were no negative changes for the offline player base. So the players that were still staying in that safe place in the offline area, they were still playing and we didn't need to make any revolution. For those players that were staying in the quick match and playing actively and they converted, the quick match gold usage increased because more options to spend money. The converted players started to use more of the functions that were available in the application because we focused on getting those players into using those new functions because they already converted. And more stuff were sold, bigger packs, more monetization, and so on. So great success by focusing on that particular group and giving them some options to play more and do more. Yeah, and then we've decided that player profile is something that we would want to add because all applications have that, so probably there's some reason people want to know how well they are performing, what's their history of playing, and so on and so on. Especially for the quick match players, because there is a lot of things that you can succeed or fail at during those matches. It was important to be able to display those informations not only for you, but for the other player as well. How to evaluate results? Because we can just add this functionality and check, okay, what percentage of players is actually using this new mechanic, but it's not exactly correct because mostly if you wanted to focus on giving better experience for the quick match players, it was important to scale those results of whether it's a successful new feature or not to that smaller base of quick match players and also those players that return for the second or third match, because profile is probably not something that a player that's playing their first game and not finishing it will be using. So only a smart part of offline players would probably use it, so we've disregarded that from the analysis. Yeah. So we've prepared the first release. And it was really simple. So we've wanted to add a profile. We've created a simple screen with only the most basic data. And we've added the option to get there from the main menu, and we've checked how many players are converting. So we know that we are focused on quick match players. We know what players are playing quick match because we have the events. What percentage of those active players are actually getting into the profile? It doesn't matter if we have like 3 different mechanics and cool collection of stuff and you can buy something there if there's not enough players using it. So we've added something simple. There was that button in the main menu. They could just enter it on every application startup, but it seems that people are not aware of that option. They are going directly into the game. They are starting their first game. It's difficult to get back to the most main screen and then find that profile button somewhere here. So let's iterate again. Before expanding with that mechanic, without adding new functionalities, we first need to increase number of players, percentage of players that are using this new mechanic. So more entry points, like profile icon on every quick match screen, because those players need to use that functionality the most. And yeah, adding more options, animations, some tutorial meant that way bigger percentage of players were getting into the profile screen. Even though we didn't have any actual complex mechanics there, there was a huge difference between the players that went into that screen and they've invested their time and they tried using it, if they didn't know what's there. And of course, we've wanted at that point to improve the percentage of players that would come back and would actually use that screen for the second and third and so on time. So at that point, if we were sure that a lot of players are seeing the profile for their first time, something simple with basic data, we've decided that, okay, this is the time that we should add some additional functions. So that's the time when we want to add quick match room statistics and inventory with all the collected stuff and cool animations and options to buy something, because now that's the moment when we're successfully converting those already converted quick match players into someone that can benefit from that profile. Without that big percentage, there would be no need for that. And also, because we are investing in quick match, it's important for other player to be able to see that, how successful you are, what's your best result in the room, for example, that you are currently playing. And for the players that we've tested that first time experience, we've also had to somehow inform them that, okay, the profile expanded. It's important not to forget about them because they went into that profile for the first time. They know that it was very basic, so we need to somehow tell them that, okay, now it's something cool. Come back and try to using it again. Yeah, and because of that, we can compare how we came into doing that first invite-only mode and how we developed somehow and adjusted those planning methods during as new data came. So first, starting with the invite-only mode, we're mostly planning what we'll do on the full quarter, collecting the ideas, scoring what's the cost and what's the benefit for us. Developing bigger segment of some mechanic that we thought and believed based on some simple data that's important for the players. Scoring the results closer to the end of that quarter. And also there were like 2 or 3 main goals that were focused on. And they were most often similar to each other. So we didn't want to like develop 3 totally different features. Quite focused on the plan. But the issues were that result assessment was after a quarter mostly, because if you're developing something bigger, most often you need to wait for that bigger thing to actually release to test that, whether it's successful. Focus was distributed between those goals. They were quite similar, but not exactly, so there was still some distribution, some catching too many options in the same moment. that development time was split. And it seemed that the general directions are always correct, but there can be some pivots made during that execution. So if we knew earlier that probably quick match would be better, we could decide on changing our ways somehow earlier. And also if you're doing some big cool thing and some players are using it but not as many as you are satisfied with, you still need to support this new feature. So you can come up with as many cool features as you want, but you probably would want to focus on those most beneficial. So there were some adjustments made. So there we focus on only one main goal, and the others were like supportive, like some blocks for how to not fail too hard. So probably you want to improve something, but on the other hand, you don't want some of the metrics to fall down because it's not success if everything else is burning. Yeah. We've decided that the smallest the possible test when we can check if the players are interested is the best. So like sometimes you don't need to create the MVP first simple version of something. You can just check whether players are actually going into that screen or trying to use that option. Because if not, this is the first issue you need to fix. And goal assessment scaled to target groups. So not always testing those new solutions based on what percentage of everyone is using those features, but trying to pinpoint those groups that would actually use that and compare whether, and based on that, decide whether this is a success. So for example, profile, which was targeted at quick match players, we wanted to scale that to that player base and check what percentage of those active returning players of quick match games are using that. So we were more focused. Most of the work was going towards that main goal. It was easier to check whether it's a success. Doing multiple small things and then testing everything was not that easy to check whether, okay, this grew a little bit, but the other things fell a little bit. Is it a success? Is it not? If you're focused on one main goal and then just putting those blocking points, it was quite easier to check if we're going the correct way. Testing players' interest as early as possible. You can add like small button or small thing early, even in previous sprints, previous quarter, and then knowing if players are actually clicking that or using that. Yeah. Checking what percentage would be interested. Yeah. And that's probably that. When doing new games, we've tried to also benefit from that. So we are working on some smaller, like this project, for example, the alchemy pipes. So using that knowledge, we've decided that, okay, let's try starting a new project with a 1 to 3 months development time for the MVP release based on how complex it is. It was another simple board game or logic game. All those kinds of games mean that you can mostly focus on the main gameplay. If the main gameplay is not enough, probably developing all those side features would not be a great investment of your time. And of course, get retention and UA data as early as possible. Then, of course, compare that to what you know from the data collected, available, or other projects, and find some market, because that was the most important. If you want to iterate fast and add new features based on what the players would want, you need to pinpoint some market, check how much you can gain from that market when it comes to retention and so on, and then expand the application. We are planning the feature based on the market. So whether it's a high tier 1 country and you want to invest full attention into in-app options, you probably don't want to add a lot of advertising and advertisement opportunities, because if it will fail at that first point, you won't get to the second anyway. And the other way around, if you're investing into 2 or 3rd or 2nd tier markets, again, adding a lot of in-apps and shop and new cool stuff that you can buy for real money is not a great investment at this point, because if you won't get to that point anyway. We've created a list of features, so we know that we want to display more ads, or the game will be mostly ad-based, so how we can use those features to actually use them in those mechanics. Collect the data. For example, you are planning the new challenge mode. Probably at this point when the application was starting, adding 50 levels is not that necessary. You can add 5 and check what percentage of players are getting there and are being blocked by that wall, that there's no more content. And if you're not successful at this point, first start to iterating with smaller steps, so tutorials, redirecting the player's attention. It's better to start small and like iterate small, especially that it's often that the small changes will benefit more. Like we've put some time at the point when it was necessary. We've started the development, the expand. We've added the new mode, the challenge mode, and the small percentage was using that. On the other hand, simple things like removing the restart button from the summary screen meant that the players were getting further because they were like not focused on getting the best result and retrying that level, and they were getting further and monetizing. And after monetizing, they were having more attention invested into all those other features. Then they were finally getting into that challenge mode because they've seen so much content at that point that was of bigger benefit for us at start. And also like adding animations for cool stuff that you have. You want to sell a great package, animate it and make it sparkle and add like particles and everything. Maybe it is better than adding new great monetized mechanic. At some point you need to expand and develop the application because it improves the longevity. But also those small iterations and data collecting is important here. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you probably need to be prepared for that. We are always like cautious about that, and we'll try to test everything. So if it seems that some new feature is requested, we still try to add it to the application and test it on small scale and then scale up and so on. So if players would suggest that, okay, the game is too difficult, first we would try to collect the information. Okay, how far are the players actually getting inside of that game? So that's the most important thing, at which point the players are quitting, whether it's early or late. Then deciding which players, for example, are best monetized because you want to earn the most probably. If those most hardcore players that are getting further, even though the game is more difficult, give you more money, maybe it's better for you to invest into them. So it's important to get those data through the events, for example, create some funnels, for example, in Firebase, and then benchmark that. Try to perform some tests, decrease that difficulty by playing with things like remote config, for example, and check whether the decrease in difficulty actually gets you more money or more retention, because maybe you want to expand the player base for your multiplayer game, yeah? And for now, maybe it's the retention and number of players that you get from the acquisition is more important. Any other questions, maybe? Technology. I didn't see that. Did you implement any way to increase finished games percentage in invite-only mode? So, yeah, we've tried to, for example, experiment with different order of options, easier access, for example, removing the necessity to manually create a profile and setting your starting values like nickname, for example. And it increased a little, but still most of the players were getting into the quick match mode, and even when getting into the invite-only mode, they were like getting back and going into automated process, because then there's like one click and you can play. You don't need to put any more effort than necessary. So we've tried, but still are more satisfied with that. We are not dissatisfied with the invite-only mode because there are still quite some players that are playing it and having fun and monetizing, but still main focus is quick match because it gets way better results. Did you gather data to evaluate and improve matchmaking in quick match mode? If yes, what kind of data helped the most? So mostly the amount of money that we got and the retention of those players, focusing on that part of the players. And Then adding the first iterations of the automatic matching and finding the players of your level, finding the more difficult players, changing the speed at which the elo, so that level of player is adjusting based on the current games, and checking whether, for example, matching only the first time players with the players of their level gives better results. So the player stays for more games, plays, launches, finishes more games. Or maybe if matching everyone with the players of equal level, or maybe pushing the players into like a little bit more difficult players is better because they have the challenge and they lose sometimes, and losing means they need to refill their currency or invest something in the in-apps. It's also good for the business. On the other hand, playing with really similar level of player is more fun because you are losing and winning more equally. So it's like steady process. It's making small changes and testing which solution is the best based on the data gathered back.
I have a question about the way you tested who's interested in the multiplayer mode in the beginning. Because there was this button.
Yeah.
I assume that it was a fake button, right?
It was a working button, but afterwards you got the information that okay, it's not ready yet. It's not fully ready yet. So
basically, the data you collected was the number of clicks.
yeah, what percentage of players that played the game before and updated wanted to test that option, and also what percentage of new players that just installed after our acquisition were interested into, okay, you can see that there's a...
How many of them pushed the button
Yeah.
saw this message display,
Yeah.
this work in progress?
Exactly. And we've also had the data on how many players, what percentage is playing the standard CPU mode and challenges, so we could compare. Because still, a new player doesn't know any of these options, so getting straight into online mode meant something for us. Okay, so thank you for the attendance, and that's all. If you want to meet us, we will be somewhere around the event.